All right, looks like we have a few people already here. So let's give it one more minute and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the first of a series of Lunch and Learn educational webinars that we're hosting. We just started this session. There'll be 6 sessions over a 6-month period, and they'll cover most everything you need to know if you're contemplating any sort of move from Dynamics GP to Dynamics 365 Business Central, or as we lovingly call it, BC. So topics that we're going to be covering today. Today we're going to be covering when is the best time to move to GP or from GP to BC. Later this month, we'll probably be doing one on Intro to BC. Then we'll follow that up with reporting on BC. We'll have a session on data. What about my data and how do I move it? There'll also be another session on payroll and HR in BC. And then lastly, workflow in BC organizations. So it'll be all about the kind of the workflow, the underlying workflow. So certainly appreciate everybody attending today. Just to let you know, this session is being recorded, and we'll go ahead and get into the content. During the session, if you do have questions within the GoToWebinar meeting, there's a section where you can enter questions, and we'll take a couple breaks throughout the presentation so that we can answer those questions. I have Susan Luby from ACE joining me. She'll be behind the scenes kind of responding to those questions, and if we don't get to them, we'll take some breaks, and then obviously have some time at the end to answer any questions you might have as well. I do have all of you muted at this point in time, just kind of keep the background noise down. But if later on, if we need to open it up during Q&A, we could certainly unmute everybody and let the questions flow. All right, so again, today's session, and let me get in presentation mode here. I just realized I wasn't in that. So today's session is going to focus on why you should migrate from GP to BC and when is the best time to move. My name is Mark Munson. I'm the president here at Ace Micro. I've been in the Microsoft space for many years, since 2003, so coming up on 20 years in the Microsoft space. Before that, I was in the IBM channel. My ERP experience personally is mostly in Dynamics GP. That's historically where I came from. But obviously, over the last 4 or 5 years, been doing a lot of work in Dynamics 365 Business Central, which is Microsoft's cloud-based solution for the space. Again, my background is mostly marketing, business development, and some operations experience as well. But I'm surrounded by some very talented people that tend to drive those types of activities. So real quick, if in the question section of GoToWebinar, if you can type in how long you've been on GP, if you're on GP, how long, if you're on BC, how long, or are you on another solution? So if you can just kind of type that into the question section real quick, that would be extremely helpful. Thomas, I like your response, sir. Okay, 16 years. Too long. Getting some interesting responses here. Based on the attendees and who I saw register for this event, most of you are known by ACE. We know most of you guys are on GP, and again, contemplating that decision on whether to move to BC or not, and when's the right time. So I just wanted to get a sense, but I thought just based on registration, that's kind of what I was seeing. So we'll continue to move forward here. and talk about kind of what's driving this change, what's driving the move to the cloud. And what we're seeing now, and we saw this move to the cloud, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, but the adoption was pretty slow. I think there was a lot of skepticism about the cloud and what to do and when to do it and if to do it and all those types of things. But it has certainly accelerated over the last 3 to 4 years. And I have to say that I think this whole pandemic has been a big part of that acceleration. I think organizations realize that, hey, the cloud is, well, one, they realize the cloud is safe and secure, and probably more safe and more secure than anybody can afford to make their own environments. Two, during the pandemic, there was a big need for remote access, which is one of the bullet points down here. So I think the pandemic kind of drove this interest in the cloud and this need for the cloud to a point where now organizations have mandated a move to the cloud. And they're starting to see the real cost benefits of it in decreased infrastructure cost, in decreased support costs. They're seeing benefits like the ability to have functionality quicker, better, faster, the ability to get away from upgrades. I mean, traditionally in the GP space, every 4 or 5 years, you had this massive upgrade that you were facing, and the associated time and expense with that. With cloud-based solutions, as you know, they kind of upgrade behind the scenes. Microsoft's cadence is twice a year. Not to say that testing is still not a good, solid business practice, but in a lot of cases, it just kind of happens behind the scenes, and we don't have these big upgrades that we have to contemplate. And then also these new solutions have a lot better integration and leverage the rest of the Microsoft, as I call it, the Microsoft stack better. So, when you see these solutions, you see the amount of time, money, and energy that Microsoft has put into having your ERP system interact seamlessly with Word, with Excel, with Outlook, and then the level of reporting and analytics that you can put on top of that, leveraging the whole Power Platform, is pretty impressive. So if you haven't seen these things, then you certainly need to reach out to us and schedule a time to take a deeper look, or let us send you some videos. But those are a lot of things that are driving, organizations to the cloud at a high level. What's driving the move from GP to BC? Well, quite simply, Microsoft is. Microsoft has made a major investment in Business Central and continues to make major investments. They continue to minimize their investments in GP. They've clearly stated that the cloud, they're all in on the cloud. They're focused on the cloud. And so when I look at Microsoft's spend and their dollars, where is it going? It's going towards Business Central. It's not going towards GP. As a matter of fact, in the Microsoft Summit meeting about 3 weeks ago, Microsoft made it very clear that in future releases of Dynamics GP, there would really be very little functional addition to it. Again, there's not really much required there because it's an older, more mature solution. But at the same time, they've just said, that this is what we're doing. GP is where it is, and the releases that we will put in market twice a year, again following that modern lifecycle release schedule, are really going to be from a compliance and security standpoint. So we saw this probably a year or two ago, where we'd see a release of GP come out and it was pretty nominal what was there, and you'd see a release of Business Central come out and there was page after page after page of new functionality. So it's pretty clear where Microsoft's time, focus, and attention is. The GP lifecycle, if you see the published lifecycle out on the web, it says to 2028 and beyond. I'm not sure if the beyond is really applicable. Again, the life cycle goes out to January of 2028 for GP. And based on what I'm hearing, I'm not sure if or how much further it will go than that. It's already sunsetted Solomon, the old SL product. So I really do see that probably by 2028, GP may be sunsetted. It doesn't mean you can't continue to work with it and operate on it after that. And certainly partners like ACE and third-party ISVs will continue to support you. But I think Microsoft's trying to divest itself and really looking to move that client base over to Business Central. And what are they doing to make that attractive? Well, that's where I'm going to kind of go into some of the offerings that they have right now. And it's called the Microsoft offer. The current offer in place is called the Bridge to the Cloud. I'm putting the Bridge to the Cloud 2 up there only because this is the latest announcement from Microsoft on offers to existing GP partners that are current on their enhancement plans. So there are a few differences there. But as I talk to my clients and describe the process, every year you have an annual renewal. And you've had that for years and years and years under GP, and you paid that annual renewal. And now you have kind of a fork in the road on how you want to renew. So if you get contacted by your partner or by your account manager here at ACE around renewal time, this is one of the primary discussion points, is you can continue to renew under what's called BREP, and there's some acronyms here that I'll explain. BREP stands for Business Ready Enhancement Plan. Or you can choose to renew under, and BREP is the traditional way you renewed under GP. That's always been the way you've renewed under GP. Or you can choose to renew under CSP, which stands for Cloud Solutions Provider. And Cloud Solutions Provider is kind of that new option that's there and available to you. If you choose that option, the price point has to be equal to what you've normally been paying under your enhancement plan. And as long as you pay that, and it has to be that or more, then you have this dual use licenses. So you can continue to work on GP, but you have Business Central licenses available to you and out there and available for when you decide to make a move. Now we'll talk about when to decide to make a move here in a second. So again, your enhancement plan, the price that you pay has to be the same, if not a little bit more. It does give you those dual right licensing, and it gives you the ability to move to a monthly billing option. So let's just say for ease of math here, let's say your annual renewal with Microsoft is $1,200. So on your renewal date every year, you've got an invoice from your partner, and you've paid that $1,200. Under the new plan, you can opt to say, hey, I want to go to a monthly billing option, and I can pay $100 a month for 12 months. So there's some niceties there when it's associated to cash flow as well. And that enhancement plan or that renewal, whether you pay on an annual basis or whether you pay on a monthly basis, last for the duration of the promo plan, which is 3 years. And we'll talk more about that as well. So going into some of the details, and as I always say, the details are in the fine print. The Bridge to the Cloud promotion is available now, and we've already started moving some of our clients over to that renewal process, that CSP renewal. We also have clients that are still staying on BREP because they're just not sure yet. In order to qualify for the new for the plan, you have to be active EP. That stands for enhancement plan. So you have to be active and current on your enhancement plan, your annual renewal. This new plan starts January 1 of 2023. The existing plan is already in place and something that we can talk to you about right now. Things that I like to note to clients. This is a one-way path. So when you make that choice to renew under CSP, you're committing to Microsoft that within 3 years, you will be on Business Central. And so that's a big discussion that we're having with a lot of our clients is, let's not renew under via CSP unless we know for sure that in 3 years or less, we will be on Business Central, because that's the commitment that we're making when we renew under that. And if not, and this bottom point, I think, this bottom bullet addresses that. If not, there's some serious teeth in it. If you don't move to Business Central by 3 years, there are some penalties and lapse charges that come into play. So when we make that decision, we want to make that decision with confidence that if we're going to renew, and we're not going to renew just under GP, BREP, we're going to renew under this new CSP model, that we're committed to making that move within a 3-year period. And Now, on the plus side, what happens is Microsoft gives you a 40% discount on your licensing. So if you look at retail cost for Business Central, depending on what licensing you need, it's either $70 per user per month or $100 per user per month. If you're talking about just core financials, it's $70 per user per month. If you're talking about manufacturing and maybe some field service or some more sophisticated distribution, then you have to go with Business Central Premium, which is $100 per user per month. But instead of that standard retail cost, you're getting a 40% discount on that. So the math on that, so for premium, it would be, you're paying $60 per user per month versus $100. And we literally just kind of take your annual renewal, we put it through a conversion process, and that spits out the number of users you qualify for at that discounted rate. Microsoft is also offering $0 users. So one of the things you have to remember that in the GP world, users were, the licensing was a concurrent model. So I could have 10 licenses of GP, but I might have 14 people with credentials, which was fine. And as long as 10 people or less were in the system at any point in time, then it was fine. If the 11th user came in there and had to log in, they couldn't until one of the 1 through 10 logged out. Going into the cloud-based model, and all cloud solutions are like this, it's a named user license. So each and every one of those 14 people needs to have a license. And so when we do that conversion, it kind of takes that into consideration. And then the $0 user licenses also take that into consideration in case you need more licenses for additional users or for service accounts or for those types of things. But again, the message here is this plan is out there, it's available, and it's a decision that each and every organization needs to make as to what they want to do, medium and long term. And it's a conversation that if you haven't already had with ACE, you should schedule a time with your account manager to have that conversation and understand what your options are, because again, these are serious decisions that have serious consequences. All right. So moving on here, and let's see, I don't see any other questions out here as of yet. And Susan, I trust you're answering those. So we talked about the reasons to move. And again, organizations are not going to make a change for just change's sake. They need valid reasons. Okay, there's no organization that says, I want to take on moving from one ERP system to another just because I've got nothing else to do in my life. So there needs to be reasons behind that. So what are some of those reasons? Some of them I touched on before, but you've thought about making an ERP change already. One of the comments in here was, I've been on GP too long. Well, maybe it's time to make that change. And Business Central is a nice option for you at a nicely discounted rate based on the commitment you've made to Microsoft so far. Company initiative and budget to move systems to the cloud. As I mentioned before, this tends to be something that we're seeing on a more regular and repeated basis, is that companies are now, in their strategic planning saying, we want to move all systems off, premise and into the cloud. Companies are facing, major costs when it comes to infrastructure refreshes. So rather than invest the dollars in hardware and in OS licenses and SQL licenses, they're saying, you know what, we're done with that. Let's get out of that business. And so let's go ahead and move to the cloud. And if we're going to move to the cloud, we can certainly move GP to the cloud. But if we're going to move to the cloud, maybe we want to move to a full-blown cloud-based solution. Remote access, we talked about that as well. You're facing an upgrade, okay? And why spend the money on an upgrade when you can spend it on potentially positioning yourself and moving towards a newer solution? And then again, more functionality sooner. There might be business requirements out there that are driving a change, and maybe this change is something that that makes sense sooner versus later. In my mind, there has to be some sort of driving event, and I call it a spend event, but it can be a lot of these, all of these reasons here. But I think there has to be an event that drives people to make the change. And we're going to talk about some different scenarios there in a second, but I'm going to pause for a second, and I am going to unmute everybody. I believe I can do that. And just kind of open it up for questions. I know I've covered a lot here. Are there any specific questions that anybody has at this point? And I believe you have to unmute yourself to be able to ask a question.
I have a question.
All right.
How would third-party modules like Integrity Data work with Business Central?
Well, that's a great question. In that, and it's actually, it takes me right in my next slide. So if you give me a chance to move into my next slide, that's one of the things that we have to do when we talk about making a move is, and I'll just go ahead and click forward on that.
Okay.
Can you move? And I think that's kind of in line with, okay, maybe we want to move, but can we move yet? And to your point, are we highly dependent upon third-party ISVs? And I've got ISV spelled wrong there. Because we have situations now where clients want to move, but they can't because they've got third-party solutions that they're extremely dependent upon. And those solutions are not BC compliant yet. And there's not necessarily an equivalent solution in the space. So guess what? We have to wait. We can't move yet. So one of the things that we have to go through with all of our clients is kind of an audit of those third-party ISVs and see, are we able to make a move, or do we have to wait until something becomes available there? But great question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, with no questions, I'll continue on that topic. We talked about, one of the things that we have to do is, can you move? Okay. We talked about the third-party ISVs, but you also have to look at customizations. How much customization did you do in GP? And is that customization still business critical for you? And do we have to look at and or maybe replicate that customization in this new environment? Also, I like to mention that this is not and I'm using air quotes here, this is not a move, this is not a migration, this is a redeployment to a new ERP system. So it requires, major commitment from your team. It requires major commitment from senior management. And so it's not something to be taken lightly. It's a big move. Now, for the clients that we've moved over, and probably about a dozen of them, they have certainly enjoyed the experience, but they've enjoyed the experience once they're up and live. But it's, the experience of making the transition is never easy. I like to say it's surgery. It hurts. It's elective surgery in that we get to choose when we're going to do it, but it's still surgery and it's going to be painful. But as partners, we work together and work through any issues or challenges. But just because you want to move doesn't mean you can move, and that's an audit that we will work with you on. And then lastly, does it make financial sense? Can we build a business case behind it? And that's what I'm going to touch on next, is kind of this tool that we're using that helps our clients make those types of decisions and give them some numbers behind it as to whether it makes financial sense and when's the best time to pull that trigger, and when there's fiscal concerns associated with it. So moving into this, I know this is a little bit of an eye chart here, but this is a TCO tool that was developed by some good friends of ours that we've incorporated into some of our analysis that we do for our clients. And I won't go through all the details here, but bottom line is on this left-hand side. Whoops, did not mean to do that. Let me back up my slide. On this left-hand side, this is your current situation on premise. This is GP. where it says current on-prem. And we're going through, and this is a small GP deployment. 3 users. They've got a little bit of ISV licensing here. We show that. They're basically, this is an on-premise deployment, so they've got platform costs for hardware, platform costs for software, OS, SQL, those types of things. You know, there's a replacement life cycle associated with that platform cost. There's support associated with it. You know, what are the costs of upgrade? You know, every 5 years is what we contemplate here. And then what are your replacement costs after, assuming an ERP system has a 10-year lifespan? And so we capture those costs, and then we capture some of these over here as well when it comes to Business Central. Again, we're replicating 3 users, ISV costs, some discounting on the subscriptions because Microsoft does have that promo, and then some other factors to come up with 3-year, 5-year, 10-year TCOs. And you can see this one is done with no spend event in the near future. There's not really any need for a hardware refresh. There's not a need for an upgrade. You know, none of those things are contemplated in the near future. And so that's why we say there's really no spend event here. But if you take this and look at it in graphical format, it shows you kind of what we traditionally see is that when you make that change from GP to Business Central, well, guess what? You're going to spend more in the first year. Of course you are. It's kind of a big project. But then if you notice, and GP's in the blue, Business Central's in the red, with no spend event, we see the total cost of ownership is still, it takes until year 5 to where we see a decrease in the total cost by moving to the cloud, because we didn't have a spend event. There wasn't an upgrade. There wasn't a technical refresh. There was none of those things contemplated. So it's about a 5-year return on investment when we see no spend event with our clients. And again, this is a very, very small example here. But let's just take a similar example, and let's say there is a spend event. Okay, so again, same numbers here, small deployment, same numbers that I've used here, but there is a spend event. They have to do an upgrade, and they have to do technical refresh as part of that upgrade to get on the versions, you know, the hardware recommendations Microsoft publishes, OS and SQL requirements. So in this situation, we have a spend event. And now look, again, we spend a little bit more year 1, as we would think, to move to the cloud. But by year 2, we're almost break even. And by year 3, we're saving money. And we're starting to save significant amount of money over a 10-year period. So you can see it's a lot, in my mind, it's a lot easier to make a decision or to take these numbers to management and say, let me show you how quickly we're gonna turn around and start saving money by making this move. And in this situation, by year 2, you're break even. By year 3, you're actually saving a lot of money and a decent amount of money. So if we go into a more complex migration with a spend event, in this situation, we've got 21 users. We have, some fairly significant platform costs. We have more support cost of that platform. We have an upgrade that's coming up that's more expensive. So in this situation, just same situation, but just a lot bigger environment, a lot more cost. And when we look at this, we turn around and say, okay, what do we see? Well, again, you're going to see more cost in year 1 because this is a major project than if you just stayed on-prem. But again, in year 2, you're about break even. You've saved about $10,000 in this scenario. And in year 3, you're certainly saving a lot of money, on about $60,000 in savings over a 3-year period. But look how this hockey sticks up the cost of continuing on with an on-premise solution versus a cloud solution. You know, you're looking at nearly $500,000 in savings over a 10-year period. That's significant. That's a significant amount of savings over that period of time. So these are things that we can do for you as a client, is come in and, let me go back, is do an assessment on your environment. Not only can we do an assessment on the data and what's required, because that's a big part of this is migrating the data over, but an assessment on total cost of ownership, and gather these types of numbers for you, and do that to give you some real sense of what types of savings you have and when does it make the most sense to make this move. So we're happy to do that for you. We're offering that as a free assessment for our clients, especially those that attended today's seminar. So just let us know if that's something that you're interested in, and we'll schedule the appropriate phone calls and data gathering that we need in order to accomplish that for you. So any questions on that spend event before we get into final thoughts? And I believe I still have everybody unmuted. Any questions? All right. I'll take silence as no questions. You can always post questions in the question bar on the web. Go to webinar as well. So I've blown through my content a lot quicker than I expected, but that's not a bad thing. So I'm going to finish up with some final thoughts here. And again, some of the things that I touched on before. You need to discuss and plan. Okay, these are things that obviously decisions that cannot be made in a vacuum. They have impact on your IT organization. They'll have impact on your user community. So if you have not already started those conversations internally, probably a good time to start those conversations. Not saying that you have to move, next week or next month, but even for long-term planning, it's good to go ahead and start having those conversations. You need to evaluate your options, and that's one of the things that I think with the tools that we can bring to bear when it comes to data migration tools, when it comes to the total cost of ownership tools that we have, will certainly assist you in that evaluation process. You need to clearly communicate your timelines, okay? For some people, making the move now is important for various reasons. For other people, you may not want to make a move until next year or 2024 or even 2025 because of other projects, other initiatives, other things that the organization is focused on. But you really, really need to clearly communicate internally as well as with your partner on what sort of timeline there's going to be associated with it. Here at ACE, we see this big bell curve over the next few years of moving our clients to Business Central. And we're just starting to get into the steeper part of the front of the bell. So communicating your timelines is important to us so that we can have the appropriate staff to address your project when it's time for you to make that move. So please make sure that you're communicating that. And then also know that ACE is going to support your final decision. If the decision is, I want to go to BC tomorrow, if the decision is, I don't want to go to BC for several years, or if the decision is, I want to stay on GP as long as I possibly can, how can we make that work? We're here to support you. We have a long storied history with Dynamics GP. It's a product that we love dearly. It's a product that I think will be out there for a while and we'll continue to support for a while. And if that's the decision of your organization, is we want to ride this horse as long as we possibly can, then that's fine. And just communicate that to us, and we'll do everything that we can to support you in those decisions. Again, contact us if you want to go through this assessment process. We'll happily schedule the time to do that. But again, some things that we all need to think about and all need to decide on and put plans together on. All right. Beyond that, that was pretty much the content that I had for today's demonstration. Again, remind you that we will be having another session. I'm trying to plan it probably that first week after the Thanksgiving holiday. It may slide into the first week of December. So going back to the slide here, the next one is going to be most interesting. It's going to be Intro to BC. We're going to have Chris and others from our team presenting to that. they like to put a little bit of a slant on it too, saying, okay, not only is an intro to Business Central and kind of a high level overview demonstration, but it's also going to be in GP, you did this, in Business Central, you would do this. Because Chris has 10, 15 years of GP experience at least, and probably a good 4 or 5 years of BC experience. So he's able to very, very nicely kind of do a comparison and contrast. So please, 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 if you haven't seen BC or if it's been a while, look at your emails. I'll be starting to get invitations out for that probably sometime next week or the following at the latest, and try to attend that session. With that, I'll open it up for any final questions. Anybody else have any final thoughts? You can put it in the question tab if you want to, or you can speak up because I believe I have all of you unmuted. All right. I think we've got a quiet group here today. I know I've gone over a lot of information. If you want this presentation, I'll put a lot of final comment there. If you want this presentation, please let me know. I'll happily send you a recording so that you can share it with others within your organization. And beyond that, I will give you about 20 minutes of your day back. And thank you again for your attendance and hope to talk to you all soon. Have a great day.